Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger of the Dragon's Den inside the OAA and one of the hosts between Taormina's on ON TV. Of course, we had a lot of interesting news surrounding the OAA this week. Of course, the passing of Keith Stevens, the football coach at Southfield Lathrop. Condolences to him and his family. We'll talk about him, about what's going on there, and then also the resignation of Dwayne Graves at Bloomfield Hills, and that situation. And the question also will be, is Jeff Rubin possibly coming back over there at Bloomfield Hills to coach the boys' team? And I'll tell you why I don't think it's a very good idea for that situation. And also some of the top boys and girls games for the week. We're going to talk first is the big news, of course, over at Bloomfield Hills. It was the Thursday. On Thursday, of course, there was a sudden resignation of I think the best Bloomfield Hills boys basketball coach they've ever had. You know what I mean? In Dwayne Graves, who stepped down from coaching after there were allegations that he slapped one player during a Wednesday practice, and then there was another allegation where he called somebody's hair nappy hair. To me, that is, I mean, like it's shocking to say the least. This happened to Dwayne Graves, and a couple months ago, he was in the state finals with this team. The first year at Bloomfield Hills, as a big school. They actually they went to state finals. They lost to Muskegon. He's coached 4 years at Bloomfield Hills. I mean, at 3 years at Bloomfield Hills, lost her, and then coached at and then of course once Bloomfield Hills lost her and Bloomfield Hills Andover merged, Graves ended up being the head coach of the boys team over there. I mean, for the new school, and he had a really nice year last year. Of course, when you have the big three led by Khalid Gracie, Armand Cartwright, and Yate Mayton. It's, and those were his three that he had even when he was at Bloomfield Hills Losser. That those three guys. And then he had the shooting that Andover brought into the table. It really had a good perception, to having of that special season. And then, of course, you look into this year with them, they're going to have a little bit of a down year with a little bit, but not at the extent what happened. Apparently, to what I heard, according to my source, that what happened was, the player actually went and told the Bloomfield Hills administrator what Graves did, and the Graves, I know, had to report it to the administrators, and he offered his resignation. But to me, this is a very sad story. You know what I mean? Because of what Graves did in his first year over there at Bloomfield Hills, what he brought to that team. It is what it is. I mean, and then you have Kyle Stratton, who coaches the freshman team over there. Now he's the interim coach. When I look at Stratton, what he does, I mean, he's a good coach. I mean, he's a good track coach. I know him very well personally from his days when he coached track. He's a good man. But when you look at what Bloomfield Hills, the situation, of course, they had to play Clarkson Friday night, and then they just got destroyed by Clarkson. I mean, a lot of people get destroyed by Clarkson these days. And then, of course, Clarkson coach Dan Fife actually went and talked to the Bloomfield Hills team after what happened, after the turmoil that's went on during the week with the Graves situation, see how their psyche was. I think these kids really needed to play that game. And then, of course, you look at the future of the Bloomfield Hills program, and there's been, you ask, according to this one article I read, of course, from Scott Bernstein on Bernie's Bites, he said, quote, that Jeff Rubin may be the next coach. And I just went myself, what? So I go in and write a blog article, and I tell you, and I mean, like, I look at Ruben. Of course, he did coach both boys and girls teams when he was at Bloomfield Hills Andover, but there's some problems I think with Ruben coaching both teams. I mean, like, one is the family commitment. You know, he sacrificed. I mean, he would sacrifice a lot of family time when you look at that situation. Another situation would be if is you look at what he you know, and what would happen to the girls program? Who would coach the girls program? You know what I mean? Like if he, because you know the girls and boys seasons are pretty much different. You know what I mean? It kind of forced Brad Crichton, of course, at Stony Creek, to basically choose girls because he coaches the varsity program instead of coaching the freshman boys program over there. You know, but when you look at the situation there, I just think Ruben going in there and coaching is a disaster waiting to happen. Another situation that I look at is, you know, there's some Losser kids, and the Andover kids I don't think are going to have a huge problem with if Ruben does become the boys coach. But the kids at Losser are going to have a huge problem. And most of the kids that are playing on the boys team right now came from Bloomfield Hills Losser. And how are they going to address to the to adjust to Jeff Rubin's system if he coaches there? You know, I mean, like, there's a lot of what ifs if Ruben does take over this program. You know what I mean? Now, I know they're high on him, but me personally, I'm not. They also said the reason why Graves resigned was because of personal reasons. I think he's got 3 children. You know what I mean? Like, I know for sure he's got 2 daughters and a 12-year-old son. But you look at with Graves, of course. Then of course you got to wonder what his future is going to be. You know, could he possibly come back to the alma mater, which is Lake Orion? I don't know. I mean, but it is what it is. I mean, like, you know, Graves is going to take the rest of the year off. You know what I mean? He will get back into coaching. You know, but there will be some jobs that will open up. You know what I mean? And I'll bet you Graves will be one of them that gets a coaching job. You know what I mean? Somewhere. I mean, but back to Ruben. Of course, other situations I mentioned the Losser kids not getting along with the Andover kids. Losser kids, of course, having issues with Ruben's system. Of course, that is a possibility when you look at that situation over there. And then, of course, you look at the other situations, that the philosophies, the difference of philosophy. Of course, we knew Graves ran set plays. We knew that. Ruben's more of a run and gun type of coach, in which, you know, there's a whole different contrast of styles when it comes to Graves and Ruben's styles. You know, I mean, like, when you look at Bloomfield Hills' girls, you know what I mean? Of course, they're led, of course, by Amanda Moss, Amanda Sape, you know, and then, of course, you look at the stability of the freshman JV teams. Bloomfield Hills is a very solid freshman and JV teams. You know, with Ruben's, of course, the problem with Jeff Rubin's program I have personally is you put a JV A team and a JV B team. The JV B team, of course, features like freshmen and sophomores. I think that's a huge. You're getting an unfair disadvantage, I think, to some of those kids that are that really are just being robbed of their playing freshman basketball. And I mean, like, and then, like, I personally think that your freshman team's going to have to be all freshmen, and your JV team, I think, is going to be mostly, I mean, like, some freshmen, but mostly sophomores. But at Bloomfield Hills, the situation, of course, with Ruben and the girls' team, he's got 4 sophomores and 3 freshmen on the JVB team, and then on the JVA team, he has a lot of freshmen and 3 sophomores. But you know, there's like a huge difference in contrasting styles based on talent. But I have a huge problem with that because you're basically playing sophomores against freshmen. You know, when they know the system, when they know the program. You know, whereas when you've been in the program for a year, you're supposed to play JV. That thing is all whacked out over there at Bloomfield Hills. And I personally worry if Ruben does get the job over there. I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be disastrous. I think it's gonna be. There's gonna be a lot of tension over there. That even if Graves does get the job, even if Rubin doesn't get the job. I mean, like, I don't think Jeff Rubin's gonna get the boys' job. And if he does, I'd be really disappointed, really shocked with RJ's decision. Scott Bernstein said that it makes logical sense. I'll tell you why it does not make logical sense for Jeff Rubin to become the boys coach. One, what happens to the girls program? Does the girls program, and Rubin admits he struggled with this. It's hard to coach two teams. It's hard to coach two varsity teams when you know that you are the guy. You know what I mean? And two, I know you're going to get a lot out of your kids, but the problem that I see is, coaching different genders. It's hard. I mean, like, and when you look at the situation, how Rubin got the girls' job, of course, I mean, like, I thought when I looked at it personally, RJ looked at it from two different ways. Well, I would have Dwayne coach the boys' team, and the girls' team would be coached by Jeff Rubin. And, I think Rubin's benefited the last 3 years, especially when you have a girl like Shannon Wilson, who's been very, very good, not only at Bloomfield Hills Andover, but also at Bloomfield Hills. And then I've heard a lot of turmoil over there. I mean, like, but you look at that Blackhawk team, you wonder how the state of the program is. Bloomfield Hills' JVA team is pretty solid. I mean, to say the least. But their JVB team's not very good. And I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it is the system of the program. I don't know what it is. And I know those people. You know what I mean? Like, I know what they do over there. And but when you look at the Grays situation, does Jeff Rubin fit the boys program at Bloomfield Hills? And the answer to me is no. Of course, a lot of people are still shocked over the recent resignation of Brian Tipton over at Oak Park, but that's a whole other story. But here, these are based on allegations, and I know Bloomfield Hills School District did an investigation on them. And you look at what happened, I mean, like, the only people that know what happened that night was Graves and the players. That's the only people that knew what happened on that night. And I don't know if they're scarred from it. I don't know. But these kids are going to have to move on from it. And this is from a kid, to what I know, I'm not going to name names, but he doesn't play a lot. You know what I mean? And I don't know how he's going to feel that one of the greatest Bloomfield Hills coaches resigned because of something. You know what I mean? Now, I know Graves has to be held accountable for this, but still, I mean, like, you don't touch a player, you don't slap a player. I'm not saying, I mean, like, but, and then it is what it is. And Bloomfield Hills gonna have to move on from it because, when you look at the situation coming up for Bloomfield Hills, their district's not gonna be easy because you got North Farmington in there. You also got Birmingham Brother Rice in there, but they gotta move on. They gotta play the rest of that red schedule. Of course, they still gotta play Adams coming up, which is not gonna be an easy game. And that red schedule to close out the year, it's tough too. And losing a guy like Dwayne Graves, I think is going to hurt Bloomfield Hills. I think in the long run, but of course they got the program there is bright, but whoever comes in there, I don't think Jeff Rubin's going to be the boys coach. I don't think he's going to be the boys coach. If he becomes the boys coach, I'd be really shocked if he becomes that because. This is not Bloomfield Hills Andover anymore. And also with him, it's family. You know what I mean? I don't think he wants to sacrifice more time with his family, you know what I mean, than what he's doing right now in the girls. And if he takes both the boys and girls job, then that could be problematic, especially considering all the travel that he's got to do within the county. Of course, that's not an easy thing to do, especially in the girls. You got to come up to Lake Orion, you got to come up to Oxford, and then of course and just imagine the boys. You got to go up to Clarkston. You know what I mean? So that's not going to be an easy situation if Ruben does take over the girls' job at the boys' job at Bloomfield Hills. So, like I said right now before, I just think right now that if I had to choose, I would think their assistant would be a perfect candidate to be the next coach because he knows his system. He knows what. I hear he's pretty likable, but I hear about him. But like I said, I think the assistant over there would be the best fit. You know what I mean? No offense to Dave Stratton, of course, their coach over there at Bloomfield Hills, but I still think that the assistant coach would be the perfect candidate. You know, when you look at the situation at Oak Park, I still think that one of their assistants is one of the best candidates, I think, to be the head coach because he knows the system, he knows the experience over there, and I think that would be the best bet scenario at what happens over there at Bloomfield Hills. When you look at the situation over there, you know, and it's not like a situation happened at Oak Park, but it's still, you gotta basically look at the situation there, and you know, you gotta move on from it. And I know these players are gonna move on. I know Dwayne's gonna move on from it. Of course, Dwayne Graves, a 1994 Lake Orion graduate. You know, that's why I asked about the possible destination where he may go. Of course, he knows a lot of people around the area as well, so he'll be a hot commodity, I think, this summer. You know what I mean, to coach somewhere, and you know, who knows where he might go. You know what I mean? Who knows? You know, but I think it's a good move for Grace to take maybe a year off, maybe take some rest, recuperate. You know what I mean? Be there for his kids. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and that's what it is. I think that it'd be perfect for him to do that, and see what happens. But I also think the media also is blowing this out of proportion as well. So you look at that situation. I just think that you know, it was an incident. You know what I mean? That was addressed, and Graves offered his resignation, and that's in the story. You know what I mean? And the media, I thought, blew this right out of proportion. You know what I mean? So it is, but it's a bad situation that happened there, and it is what it is. All right, now, everybody, now when we come back, we're going to talk about some football. Of course, we've had some sad passing of Southfield Lathrop football coach Keith Stevens, who passed away on Friday. We'll talk more about his life and his accomplishments and what impacts that will have on the Lathrop program, and also what's going on with other coaches, of course, what's going on with them, and of course, you know, with National Signing Day done, have we heard the last of Mike Weber here on OAA Now? Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, blogger of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts between Taorminas on ONTV. We're going to talk some football here coming up. Of course, news coming out of the day on Friday of the passing of Southfield Lathrop football coach Keith Stevens, who passed away from pancreatic cancer at 66. Stevens, of course, coached 24 years at Oak Park, coached 1 year at Dearborn Heights Robichaud. You know, and then, you know, he knew, I mean, like, nobody, he was a fighter. He always battled. He never gave up. You know, when he battled this pancreatic cancer, you know what I mean, for a year now. Unfortunately, this is the second coach who passed away in the Blue Division. Of course, John Lloyd, head coach at Pontiac, passed away in November due to a heart attack, and it was over there at Pontiac, of course. Lloyd spent his first year coaching over there at Pontiac, and now Pontiac is faced with an uncertain situation trying to find a new coach. You know what I mean? So now Lathrop now has that same situation. I still think both Lathrop and Pontiac will probably name coaches in-house. I think it would be the right thing to do. You know what I mean? To keep the system intact, keep the memory of both their coaches in line. I mean, like intact. But with Stevens, of course, Stevens was a very, very good coach at what he did over there at Lathrop Village. Of course, he tried to rebuild. He's trying to rebuild the Charger program over there. Of course, they went down some hard times. Of course, he had a really good quarterback this year. I thought Lathrop's getting better each year. They just got to take the next step next year, and I think now with the son passing of Keith Stevens, I think that drive. I think the Chargers to do more in the blue this season to play in his memory. Of course, it's the same thing with Pontiac with Coach John Lloyd. You know what I mean? I think those players are going to play real hard for him. I think that personally, it's a very, very, it's a tough situation to lose your head coach. You know what I mean? To a sudden illness, to a sudden death. You know what I mean? Like sudden passing. But it's how the kids respond, and how do they respond to this? I know the coaches would probably say, you know what I mean, don't worry, we're in a better place, and we won't. I mean, like, don't pout about us. You know what I mean? We're in a better place, and there's something. You know what I mean? That there's something that is special. You know what I mean? Like, play the game the right way. Play the game. You know what I mean? You might not win championships, but you play the game the right way. And I think personally, I think it's going to happen over there at Lathrop and also at Pontiac with the situations there. But of course, right now when you look at the situation over there with what Stevens did, of course, we didn't know that he had pancreatic cancer. We didn't know about it until the Southfield superintendent said he was battling it for a year. He battled it, and here's the thing I don't like. It's about what cancer is. Cancer takes away people that we love, we cherish, we enjoy the most. And you look at what happened. You look at, you know what I mean, and of course we have these foundations. Of course, girls teams, of course, play the Coach versus Cancer game, of course, for Katie Yao, of course, who passed away from cancer when she was at she used to coach at North Carolina State. Of course, both college boys men's basketball teams, of course, know about the great Jim Valvano, who passed away from cancer, and also, of course, just recently, of course, cancer. It's a thing that, you got to fight it. You got to battle it. You know what I mean? You cannot give up you can't give up. You know what I mean? And I think Stevens did exactly. He battled it. He said, you know what? I'm not going to, if I do pass, you know what I mean? I'm going to finish. I'm going to toughen it out. I'm going to finish the season. I don't care what it is that you do, what you do to me, cancer. And he fought, and I think I feel like Lathrop's going to fight. You know what I mean, and use and usually coaches will play much harder for your players. Actually, and players play harder for the coaches they like and they respect. Keith Stevens is one of those guys that has earned people's respect and earned what this team. You know what I mean? Needs, and to his son passing, it's like a child losing a father. And it's not an easy thing to do over there. And it's not an easy thing to do. And that's what happened over there with Keith Stevens. I mean, my God's condolences in his family and, or with his family over there at Lathrop Village, you know what I mean, with Keith Stevens, of course, a very, very well-respected man within the football community over there at Southfield Lathrop. Now, when it happens with the Charger future, I still think, personally, when I look at it, I think one of his assistants should take over. I mean, they should keep everything in-house. I think one of the assistants should be the head coach, personally, because it keeps the system intact. It keeps the the idea goal in mind. Of course, I still think that they need to keep it in house. You know what I mean? At Lathrop Village, I think it's the right thing to do is keep it in house. Personally, that's how I feel like it. And then of course you look at and then of course when you look at the Stevens legacy, I still think if you name one of his assistants head coach, I think it keeps the Stevens legacy in line over there at Lathrop. You know what I mean? So I think personally, if they do go that route, now I'm not saying that Southfield Lathrop will probably go that route, but I think it would be the right thing to do, not only for the kids but also the community over there. Of course, Steven spent 24 years coaching at Oak Park. He spent at least a couple of years at Dearborn Heights Robichaud. Of course, in the OAA terms, of course, Steven spending and of course he spent a couple of years when he was at Pontiac Northern, also. So he did know the OAA very well. Of course, he spent time at Pontiac Northern, 24 years at Oak Park, and but he did spend some time over at Dearborn Heights Robichaud. Of course, he was I think he was the president of the MHA football committee. I think he was in the committee, I guess. But like I said, you know what I mean. The football committee lost a really good man in Keith Stevens, and got condolences from the OA family and the OA Now and family go out to his family, and we're going to go over a couple of course, we had National Signing Day, of course, happened Wednesday. Of course, Mike, of course, Tennessee got, Tennessee, of course, getting, John Kelly. Of course, Cole Chewin's going to Michigan State. I mean, I was very impressed with Michigan State's recruiting class. Michigan had an okay recruiting class, but not a level talent. Central Michigan's got a new football coach. He's former coach of the Detroit Lions special teams. There's this guy, of course, out of market, out of our league market. We'll talk about a little bit. And his guy is Mike Weber of course, he used to play at Detroit Cass Tech. Of course, he ended up committing to Ohio State, but found out when his running backs coach ended up going to the NFL and the Chicago Bears. You know what I mean? Thomas Wilcher went on air and said he was really upset. He was devastated. And he felt like Urban Meyer did this to him. He would sign the best athlete, the number one athlete out of the Metro Detroit area, and have him go to Ohio State. He signed his national letter of intent, he felt like, and Weber felt like he was wronged. Of course, Weber was the one originally who committed to Michigan, but ended up decommitting from Michigan after Brady Hoke left. It was after Brady Hoke got fired, and then of course he chose to go to Ohio State because of the running backs coach. Here's the problem that I have is players have a connection with their coach. You know what I mean? And I know Weber had this with Ohio State's running back coach, former running backs coach, but you got to have a commitment to the school and the university. I'm not sure if Weber had that. Now, with Ohio State, of course, Urban Meyer had a talk with Weber about the situation, what happened on Twitter. And, I don't know. I still don't know if Ohio State, and I know Thomas Wilcher is very upset with this situation and what's going on. And he wants Urban Meyer to talk to him face to face. Now, I know there's another player from Detroit Cass Tech, of course, who is going to Ohio State. But I still think personally with the Weber situation, I just think that it would be honorable for Ohio State to release him with a letter of intent. But this is up to Weber himself and his family. I don't think they're happy with the Ohio State situation. And even though you signed your letter of intent, you're binded by it. But if Ohio State released him out of his intent, he could sign elsewhere. I don't think it would be a good idea but it is what it is, and I think there's got to be a lot of lessons learned here with college recruits. If you sign the dotted line, you file the paperwork, sign your national letter of intent. You probably gotta honor the commitment. Now there's some people say, well, wait a minute here, you don't have to honor that commitment. I mean, but when you have that paper signed, you know what I mean. I don't know what's gonna happen with him. I really don't. I mean, and then what's gonna happen is, I think the situation there is, I think it could get a lot interesting before it gets better over there at Ohio State, because Weber thought he was going to play a lot of time there at Michigan. At Ohio State. Now, he could still play a lot of time there at Ohio State, but just right now, when you look at that Ohio State team, they're still going to be a very good football team. They got a lot of the pieces back that won the national championship. But like I said before, I think that when it comes to recruiting, you cannot commit to a coach. You got to commit to a school and a university. I think when I look at what John Kelly at Oak Park, Junior McMillan over at Western Michigan, I mean, they committed to a university. They committed to a school. You know what I mean? I look at a guy like Matt Krause, who signed with Central Michigan. He committed to a school. He walked on. And then, of course, you look at Cole Chewins. Of course, he committed to Michigan State. Of course, Michigan State, the school. You know what I mean? Michigan State, a very good academic school. A lot of these places have good academic schools. You know what I mean? Whereas I know Ohio State has a good academic school. Michigan's had a good academic school. I just felt personally that when you look at the situation there, when you look at, of course, other recaps, of course, Southfield had a lot of people sign. Of course, a couple went to Minnesota. But when you look at going to play college football, going to play you do have success playing in a big-time environment, a big-time school. But when you know about the situation, you tend to struggle with it. You know what I mean? And, of course, I still think, some of these kids are going to play right away, of course, but also there's going to be some they're going to have to walk on. You know what I mean? You got to be careful with that situation, no doubt. Even when you sign your letter of intent, you know what I mean? When you sign that letter of intent, everything's final. But if you don't do it, you can still not sign your letter of intent to sign it. Look what happened to Malik McDonald last year, Southfield. Of course, he didn't sign his letter of intent because his mom had some issues with Michigan State. Until about a week later, his mom ended up eventually signing the letter of intent. And now McDonald's one of the best players, you know what I mean, one of the best linemen, not only at Michigan State right now, but he also is one of the best in the country. You know what I mean? And look at what Michigan State is. You know what I mean? I think when you look at the OAA landscape, I think Michigan State has done a magnificent job with the OAA landscape. And, of course, Khalid Kareem recently said he committed to Michigan State, but then he changed his mind, said he's not committed to Michigan State. So, like I said, I mean, I still think that when you look at with Harrison, with Khalid Kareem, I still think personally that, if he does go to state, I think he would be a very good fit there in East Lansing. But some of these juniors, of course, if I mean, I know it's a tough situation for them. They wanna get their schooling over. I mean, get their commitment. You know what I mean, to their verbal, so they can just focus on playing the 2015 season. Of course, when you look at that season coming up, a lot of people look at the league, the league coming up. When you look at it here, I just think that the early on preseason favorites early would be in the red. I probably would say Clarkson, but I'm not sold on Clarkson this year. After winning 2 state championships, schedule's very tough. Of course, Lake Orion's trying to have a bounce back year. West Bloomfield's gonna be very good. I mean, I still personally think the best athlete coming out next year's class is Tristan Jackson of West Bloomfield, because of what he can bring. Tristan Jackson's a freak of nature. He's a good player. Heck of an athlete. I think personally, I think in my years of seeing as an opponent, you know what I mean? In my years of seeing of an opposing player, I think Tristan Jackson, I think is the best athlete I have ever seen in my career. I'm just flat out being honest because he can do things that nobody can do for a team. You know what I mean? He can play quarterback. He can play wide receiver. He can play and in basketball he can play all 5 positions. You know what I mean? Having a nice chat with Jeremy Dennett, of course, the boys coach. You know, Tristan Jackson's a heck of a basketball player. He's a heck of an athlete. It would not surprise me. I would think if he does not go D1, I would be very disappointed if Tristan Jackson does not go D1. For his college. I would think, you know what I mean, personally, if he doesn't go D1, I'd be very disappointed. You know, it's the same thing I felt with Michael King. Of course, what West Movie did to Oxford the other night in boys basketball. Of course, that was just complete annihilation. Of course, King showing off his muscles. He deserved to show off his muscles. You know what I mean? Because he's one. I think he's one of the West Bloomfield. I think that duo, Tristan Jackson, Michael King, are probably the 2 best athletes I probably have seen come out of that Lakers system. That's just my personal opinion. In my opinion. Okay, now everybody, now when we come back, we're going to talk boys and girls basketball, recapping some of the team's top games, and also for last week's and this week's games, of course, coming up here on OAA Now. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, blogger of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts between Taormina's on 01TB. Recapping some of the games last week, of course, Clarkston knocking off, and boys, we're going to go boys first. Of course, we're going to go with Clarkston. Of course, the Wolves knocked off North Farmington, and also North Farmington also lost in that game, also lost on Saturday over in the west side of the state. They lost 65-55 to, not sure the name. I kind of forgot about it, but they had issues with the officials all game long over there. And of course, Jerome Rogers, 17 points, but, you know, they didn't accept the trophy, you know what I mean, in that game, because usually during these tournaments, they tend to give trophies out to, winning teams and losing teams, you know. And there were a lot of people that said that, you know, that North Farmington did not accept the trophy, you know what I mean, because they were so upset with the officials, you know. There's a huge difference, I think, with the officials from the OAA compared to the west side of the state, because I personally think that if you're a team, I think in the OAA, and you're playing a team basically from out west, probably west of Lansing, I don't think you're going to get any calls in that game. And I just think personally that North Farmington didn't get any calls in that game against I think it was Wayland Union, I think they were playing. But I'll take a look at it, you know what I mean? But they didn't get any calls in that game. Jerome Rogers had 17, shut down Anthony Quansica and Jacob Joubert. So it was tough there in that situation. And also North Farmington had a tough one with Clarkson the other night. They ended up losing by, I think it was by 10. No. I hear it was not a good game, I think, for North Farmington. They didn't shoot well. They didn't play well. A lot of things were exposed in that game against Clarkston. And Clarkson was playing without Taven Throgmorton. Of course, Throgmorton, one of the best power forwards. Of course, he's a transfer from Wall Lake Northern. And he played very well until he ended up injuring his knee. He's getting an MRI, I know, on Monday, of course. So the Clarkson ended up stepping their game up. But this Clarkson team this year is very, very deep. Got Foster Lawyers having a heck of a year. You got Andrew Myers, who's having a good year. Jonah Newblad, of course, he's having a good year. Of course, Mayor Canada, he's having a good year over there at Clarkson. This Clarkson team, really deep, you know what I mean? And Dan Feist's done a really nice job with that team. It would not surprise me if Clarkson tries to make a deep run into the playoffs, but you're probably gonna have to deal with Macomb Dakota, who's actually very, very good ever since they got their transfers from Mount Clemens, and they've been playing some good basketball lately. So a lot of people are looking at possible Clarkson Macomb Dakota rematch. It is possible, you know what I mean? And then, of course, the team I was really surprised was Rochester Adams. Of course, Adams beat Southfield on Saturday. So that was a huge win for the Highlanders, but they ended up losing to Southfield Lathrop uncharacteristically. And to me, that was a stunner right there when you lose to Lathrop. Of course, Lathrop's Freddie Johns had a heck of a year for them, but it was very unusual to see Adams lose to Southfield Lathrop like that. And, I had to infuriate John Hall, for that game. And then, of course, they went back, bounced back, beat Southfield, beat Southfield in overtime by 2. So it's a huge bounce back win for Rochester Adams. And we'll see what happens heading on there the rest of the year. I know they play, I think Adams plays Bloomfield Hills this week, and they also play Clarkston this week. So that's not going to be, the Clarkston game's going to be, not going to be an easy game for Adams at all. I still think Clarkson beats Adams pretty bad. And then the Bloomfield Hills game, I think Adams will win that game. I think they will split this week. A team that I think would be a team I was surprised, of course, Troy Athens. Of course, they knocked off Pontiac at Cy Green Gym. Troy Athens playing a lot of senior experience. You know what I mean? They're using that right now, their advantage. Of course, I still think Pontiac. The game was 37-37, and the Athens went on an 8-0 run to close that game out. So, got to give credit to Troy Athens for what they did there. Troy and Lake Orion, I thought personally was a very, very competitive game in that on Friday night. I really, hadn't been for Troy hitting 11 threes, in that game, I think Lake Orion wins that game. But, it makes the second game over at Troy a lot more interesting. You know what I mean? The Dragons did get their first win of the year, knocked off Rochester pretty convincingly, actually. But I think Lake Orion's playing a lot better offensively. Defensively is going to be the issue. I know they play Avondale Tuesday night, and that's not going to be an easy game. Of course, Avondale had a really impressive win over Seaholm the other night. Of course, Chris Barton is a very, very important piece of that Yellow Jacket attack for Coach Tim Morton. And also you look at in the goal, of course, Farmington now up a game now on Berkeley. Of course, at their Berkeley Shun loss the other night, they played Thursday night over at Farmington. So that was a shocker right there to see that Berkeley at Royal Oak ended up beating Berkeley the other night. And Farmington, of course, now they blew out Harrison, they blew out somebody else, I know, but Farmington right now is riding the ship right now as we speak. So I think right now some of the big games coming up, of course, Clarkson Adams, of course, Oak Park, you know what I mean? Oak Park is an interesting game. I think Lake Orion's got a very brutal schedule this week. Of course, playing Avondale on Tuesday, playing Oak Park on Thursday. Oak Park, I'm not sure where they stand right now, but it looks like that they're starting to get their act together a little bit. Sorry about me yawning. You know what I mean? Just been going through a lot of things. You know what I mean? And then of course you got Seaholm. They play West Bloomfield. Of course, West Bloomfield. This Laker team's for real. You know what I mean? They just went and took a good Oxford team and just took them behind the woodshed and killed them. They killed them. 70-44. What can you do? What can you do? And that was at their place on a big court. And West Bloomfield and Tristan Jackson only had 24. You know what I mean? That's stunning. You know what I mean, to say the least, But it also tells how good the Jeremy Dennis team is over at West Bloomfield is. They're a good basketball team. There's no doubt they're a good basketball team. So we'll see what happens over there. This week, of course, and of course in the goal, and of course got Farmington Berkeley on Thursday night. That could decide a gold title. And I still think, in that game I like Farmington because I think they have the size to compete with Berkeley. But it could be a really close game right there, no doubt about it, in that one. Now let's go over to the girls. Of course, a lot of teams are having had their pink games last week. Lake Orion had a pink out game on Thursday against Oxford. I was really, really shocked, really disappointed the way the Dragons played in that game against the Wildcats in that one. But let's go in the red first. Of course, Clarkson beating a depleted Harrison team, of course. The big one of the week there is Lathrop and Rochester Adams over at Lathrop Village. Those two teams still got to play each other again over Adams. Not sure when the makeup date is for that game, but it'll be a good matchup, I think, for Lathrop and Adams. I know Lathrop, I think they play Clarkston this week, and then they play Adams. But I still think personally, when you look at them with Lathrop, I just think that they're deep, they're balanced, they're good, they're a good team. Of course, Michelle Jackson Marshall's done a heck of a job with that team. But you look at Adams, you look at Adams. Of course, Adams is a team that I thought they righted the ship back a little bit when they beat Stony Creek by 15. But we don't know where this team's at right now. We really don't. And, and that situation with Adams, you know what I mean? Adams plays Harrison Tuesday night, and then they play Lathrop. So I think Adams will beat Harrison. But I also think that that Lathrop game with them is going to be a huge, huge, huge game for that one right there in the red. I think if Adams can defeat Lathrop and get back in that red race, I think it'll be an interesting race throughout that rest of that division. And then, of course, let's go to the white. Of course, Oxford now has a 2-game lead on everybody. Of course, I was very disappointed with the Dragons the other night when they took on the Wildcats. Turned it over 30 times. Can't do that against a very good aggressive defense like Oxford. I just thought, the weak preparedness, the week that would prepare Orion for this game would have helped them, but I guess it did not. But you got to give Oxford a lot of credit. Of course, their defense played very well in that game. They of course, what didn't help the Dragons was two of their better players got into foul trouble. Serious foul trouble. And Oxford really kept their fouls down in that game, in that second half, and that was the reason why Oxford won that game. Now, Oxford's got a brutal schedule, of course, to close out the year. They still got to go. They host Orion, but they got to go to Bloomfield Hills and they got to go to Troy. Those two games are not going to be easy games for Oxford. And then, of course, you still got to go to West Bloomfield, which is a death trap. You know what I mean? When you play West Bloomfield in their gym, it's a death trap, basically, to look at it. And I think, Oxford could have some issues, But the key against Oxford is if you shut down Murphy and you shut down Donaldson, I think you're going to be in good shape. You know what I mean? That's how I think you beat Oxford. And also it was the pink game for the Dragons and the Wildcats. Both teams wore pink. I don't have a problem with teams wearing pink. You know what I mean? Like light pink and hot pink. I think that's fine. You know what I mean? And then of course, Troy, the team. It's hard to figure out. Of course, they play very well against Lake Orion, and then of course they look really bad against some other teams. Oxford didn't look good. Bloomfield Hills didn't look good. I think Troy Orion's going to be a huge game Friday night. I really do. But of course Lake Orion's going to be playing 3 games in 3 games. Of course they play Lapeer on Monday. They play Avondale on Tuesday, and then they play on Friday against Troy. So we'll see where the Dragons are at. I still think right now, I just think if Oxford might lose one of those games, you know what I mean? And I mean, like, and of course, you got Lake Orion at the end of the year, so it'll be an interesting situation right there to see where Oxford's at. In the blue, you got Oxford against in the blue, you got Royal Oak, and right now, I think they're in total command at division. Beat Seaholm pretty bad, shut down Mackenzie Harbord to 11 points, which is hard to do, especially with what she does. I mean, like, but you got to give Brian Zapata a lot of credit. But the schedule is going to get really interesting for them. Royal Oak, they still got to play Oak Park at Oak Park. They got to go to Lake Orion, which is not going to be an easy game for a crossover. And then they got to go to Seaholm as well. So their stretch later in February is going to be really, really tough, I think, for Royal Oak. You know, they got to go to Oak Park, they got to go to Lake Orion, and they got to go to Seaholm. And that's not going to be an easy games right there for the Ravens. And the gold right now, Southfield's this running ran shot in that division. And you look at the Blue Jays, of course, it would not surprise me if, you know, I still think Athens is the best competitor and Berkeley, but I think they can beat both those teams heading on out to close out the rest of the year. Now, when we head into final thoughts, you know, a lot of interesting games coming up this week. We'll see what happens. Of course, some teams are playing makeup games. Some teams are going to be playing weekend games like we saw Rochester Adams. Some games are going to be played on Monday like Lake Orion Lapeer. But we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? We'll see what happens today. We'll see what happens. All right, everybody, I'm going to sign on out here. Stay updated on my blog, Inside the OAA, and also the Dragon's Den covering Lake Orion sports coverage, and also we'll keep an eye on the situations going on throughout the OAA. All right, I'm signing out here. I'm Sammy Taormina. I'm signing out.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.